All right, welcome back to the show. Today I have a very, very interesting guest on the show. He is very, very experienced, a long-time veteran in the field. I'll leave him to introduce himself. But so Srinivas, why not you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Charles. And I've been following what you do, and it's great work out there, man. Thanks so much for having me here. Uh, Interesting you said veteran out there because I don't see myself as that old, very young still. But thank you so much. So, quick intro of myself. Most of them who've known me call me Srini for ease of use. Um, yeah, uh, I've I've been in the IT market for 13 years. Started off as a desktop support engineer. Uh, Pretty much the career was very small in terms of when I started off 5 months, 9 months, 8 months, HP, Dell, IBM. And then came the big break. Obviously, didn't know much about VMware when I started off in 2009. And I started off way back when, it's still 2.x was running, GSX was still there, here and there. And then grew into technical account manager, moved from my home base, Bangalore, to Malaysia. Um, a part of an internal transition, was kicked up about it because I moved from support and started seeing customers face to face instead of being on calls. Even though I love being on calls, I still love. I wish I could go back to support days, but yeah, it's very different. I'm not probably as technically equipped as I was then. Probably that's got to do a lot more with how I moved into a technical account management role. And then I moved on from VMware, surprisingly, for a lot of them. I moved into the customer space. I joined one of the top banks in Southeast Asia, and I joined them as pure operations guy, trying to lead the team to bring their operational ability into good effect. Then slowly moved into heading the team. And now I'm doing completely different roles. I'm kind of heading into solution architecture space, handling a team of architects. I'm handling innovation. I'm handling transformation pieces, doing a lot of strategy around what technologies should be adopted. This is career, but what I'm more kicked about most of the time is my community experience and what I do with the community. When I was in VMware, VMUG was it didn't have the kind of exposure in the region. It still is lacking in a way in this part of the world, at least. Unlike Singapore, here we're still trying to get that, momentum here. But when I was in VMware, I always found VMware could be used effectively. And then as soon as I moved into a customer space, first thing that I did was I want to get into VMware. And I said, okay, I'm going to be there, try and see if I can champion it. I've done miserably bad, not really done great in that area, but I've used my social, channels as much as I can.
So it's interesting. I want to tap a little bit more on this whole community thing that you talk about. How did you actually get started in it?
Actually, it started off in VMware itself. When I joined VMware in Malaysia, one of the big things that I noticed is, because I came in at around 2013, and here in this part of the world, vSphere itself was still being adopted. I mean, people were still looking at whether to go virtualization or not. And that kind of, hit me back a little and like, come on. I mean, I've been working for this organization for so many years. I've seen markets out there, and they're doing wonderfully well with the technology. Why is this market so slow about adopting it? And once I started going to the customers, I realized it's the gap in skill set. It's really about how much they know about it, how much has been told, and how much has been, it's not about telling about a product. It's about what is there behind the product. Why do you need to do that product? Why do you need to use that technology? And that's actually where it started. And even though in VMware I couldn't push that hard enough, I realized you need to be part of the community to push it. And me just moving into a customer space helped me do that. And I said, okay, there is an opportunity here. I could probably do that. Not in the way that every other VMware group has done in all other country chapters. We haven't done that really well here, but some bit, we still, there was a point when we didn't have a single vExpert in Malaysia. That was alarming, and took it up. I said, okay, let me do that. And then now we see a lot more vExperts. a lot more VCAPs, a lot more, guys coming into the certification stream, because there's a lot more constant, talk about it. Obviously, you got to give a lot of credit to what VMware has done in the community space, along with the partners who have tried and spread the knowledge of it. But I think it is also about how much we share and expand the network. So those are the areas that I focused on: expanding the network, trying to build a network of people, to share whatever little knowledge I have about it, or probably get the right people to share the kind of knowledge. I kind of use guys like you. I know there are a lot of other guys, out there from VMware who share a lot of stuff on social media. I use that content. I share it across. I don't create myself. I don't curate content here. I say there's a lot more out there. Why don't we use that and spread it across? A simple share will not hurt. I mean, you don't need to sit and do it yourself. You can still share, and there's a lot more to talk about these things. So yeah, that's how it started.
So I mean, you are obviously the VMUG leader now. In Malaysia, I know we have put a lot of effort trying to get the engine going.
Right.
So in your opinion, you just kind of briefly said it just now that it is not as stellar as it should or could be. What do you think is lacking? Why do you think that people don't participate in community?
If I have to be blunt and honest, the way I've always been, it's just, I think it's the culture. It's just the mindset that this part of the world has. Uh, People tend to rely on vendors and partners a lot more to do their stuff, and that's why they don't tend to come out and speak to people who just jam up for technology. They look at rewards out of the events, which is bound to happen in this part of the world. I understand, but I don't see someone who's going to say, "Come, let's have a drink and just talk about technology." Someone who's going to say, "Let's just meet up for dinner and just speak about everything under the roof on what we're doing." Nobody does that until unless you've got something that you're selling or something that you're buying. That's when people tend to speak to each other about these, and that's the kind of it's more of culture and mindset, to be honest. And I think what needs to be done, though, is not to sell technology for the sake of selling it, to get into the root of why technology needs to be adopted. Where is the gap in skill set amongst the people inside the organization? How do we build that without expecting anything in return? And that's the part which I think could be worked on, because I see a lot of vendors coming and speaking about a lot of huge changes in technology space. To be honest, the organizations here not even looking at it, because they don't even know there is a problem area which can be addressed using that technology. It's about figuring that out, and I think that's where the work needs to go in. And we do our best within my organization here to build that skill set as much as we can, but the openness to learn stuff is still lacking in a lot of them. Nobody wants to move up. Like, it's not like how we were. I mean, at least if I look at myself, I wanted to move from support. I wanted to move into account management space. I wanted to meet customers. I wanted to see different technologies. I wanted to move into a customer space to see a lot more stuff. And that desire, that burning stuff, desire to learn things, I don't see that as much. I think it's more of culture and mindset, really.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you kind of talk a little bit to that tone, right? And one such use case is now with all the pandemic and everything else. I know you work for a large financial organization in Malaysia, so I just want to kind of tap your minds around this, right? What have the organization done very differently? I'm assuming there's many things that has changed. The way you guys work is completely different. How have you guys adapted to that?
It's a huge change, especially when you're not prepared, right? And normally changes are very common. You tend to accept changes day to day, right? But this was a change that you never expected and you're never prepared for. So even an organization as big as what I work for, we had the challenges to accept it. But once we started accepting it, looking at it, we found ways where we look at the future state of how we can make this a permanent way of working. It's not about today's situation. It's about tomorrow. And we started looking at agility. We started looking at flexibility. We started looking at, productivity in a different way. And we said, we can't do this forever. It's not necessary. And we kind of started looking at killing multiple birds at the same time. We had security that we could revamp and structure it much better. This. I think the right way to put it is we looked at this as an opportunity to move ahead a few years into a strategy and we brought it ahead, right? So we kind of moved our strategy ahead, and that kind of changed. It's just the opportunity that was seen, and we said, let's bring in the right kind of technologies to change the way we work. And it was not easy. It is still not easy, uh, because again, we are speaking about mindset and culture. An organization as old as this, right?
So yeah. So it's always difficult, right? Let's talk a little bit about the journey, right? I mean, did obviously nobody planned for this to happen, right? You have stuff in the pipeline that you needed to do, and then when all this came, how did you guys adapt? And was there like, there's a moment of panic to say, hey, let's really really sit down and did you shelve a lot of projects that you're kind of working on, or you kind of brought forward, and then had to recalibrate, or what exactly do you guys do? I mean, in general.
That's the amazing bit about the organization that I work for. We don't shelf anything that we're working on. We keep that going, but we start looking at it from a different perspective and start working on the things that we need to work on right way. So yes, we moved forward the whole idea of what we strategized from an end user perspective. We had to get the whole workforce mobile. We had to get all of them. And working for the leading financial organization, you've got security, you've got data, you've got so many things that you need to look at. All those were part of the plan for a few years from now, but we kind of said, let's bring it ahead. Yeah, let's just accelerate it, but we didn't slow down. So if you look at, we did bring out what we need to bring out to the market at the same time that we thought we would. But at the same time, we also looked at our own workforce and tried to see how we can continue to keep them motivated and work from wherever they can and still contribute to the organization and to the economy and to the market. And, it was more about prioritizing a few things, putting in a few more cycles of hard work, sleepless nights, but it was kind of easy because you were at home and doing sleepless nights. It's okay. It's still okay, rather than sitting at work and doing sleepless.
Yeah, because I know Malaysia had that whole MCO lockdown. It was quite severe. In fact, it was, I think, a little bit more severe than the ones we had in Singapore, right? In many ways. So I mean, to the point of a mobilizing workforce, right? What was the turnaround time? What was the goal, right?
Yeah, I can mention only briefly about it, but what we were trying to do is get most of the operational stuff to be split in a way so that some of them are still available in the locations that we have a data centers in, but the rest of them, because even operationally, we always had the ability to work from anywhere. I mean, nothing wrong about it, right? We always had the ability, but it was about putting it into practice and testing the whole methodology now. And I mean, luckily we did, it was there. It was well planned in that way from an operational perspective, from complete IT operational perspective. But that's not where it ends, because we belong to a space where we need the business users. We need those guys to have the ability to work from anywhere. And that wasn't there. And especially when looking at banking, financial, we have got a lot of constraints around what kind of systems can be accessed from outside and stuff like that.
Because the reason why I spoke to that tone is because, at least for me, right, at least at VMware, when this whole notion of working from home happened, it's like, we used to go to the office every now and then, but we do travel a lot. We do cover the region quite a bit. And it didn't come as a massive impact to me, so to speak. Yes, I get to spend a lot more time at home, but generally it didn't really change everything that I do. I mean, to your point, right? You already have some of these tools, right, that you're already using on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just curious, when people say, hey, I want to mobilize my workforce, blah, blah, blah. What exactly are we mobilizing? Because we already have half of it done, right? So, I'm just curious, more from a turnaround time, right? It's like, your boss comes out and says, hey, Srini, I need this done in like 2 weeks. Possible? Then, we kind of go scratching our heads like,
Right.
Possibly,
Yeah. So mobility was there when it comes to the IT support and operational teams. It was always there, right? But that's not what the organization runs with.
Right.
it's the business users. It's really those guys who actually face the customers out there, and and ability to get the backend teams which support the customers out there to have them working from anywhere. And that was a crazy kind of targets that we had to achieve, to put percentage of those business users into work immediately somehow. And we kind of used all possible options we had, all the plethora of technologies that we use inside, that could be VPNs to anything that you talk about. We used all of it and started distributing some of them to certain users. And then now we are focusing on bringing all of them into one particular platform, where it's just not about this situation. We knew we had to do this at some point in time. We just brought it forward and said, let's do it from now. And we are kind of bringing everyone onto one platform where, irrespective from today, anywhere they work, anytime they have to work from anywhere, they can. And that is what we changed. We said, we have to bring this. We have to bring this change. If we don't bring it, nobody will bring it. And it's good. It's good to an effect that even though the market says the market is backed, we are able to function as an organization. We are able to go out there and bring out the things that the customers want. And that's amazing. Obviously, the IT folks are the guys who are always not given the credit for in the open about it. But when we see those amazing applications and amazing stuff from the organization going out, I kind of sat back yesterday and I was very proud of what we did, because we knew we had to put in a lot of effort to make this happen.
Yeah, the IT folks never get a pat in the back except for the escalation. So
yeah, they get a pat in the back only then. That's a different kind of a pat, though.
But just last question around this whole technology piece. In your opinion, obviously you mentioned there's a lot of technologies that you piece together to build this up and to make it work, right? If there's one particular piece of tech that you feel that is revolutionary and completely transform how we do things, what would it be, in your opinion? I mean, since you have done this in more recent times, just one piece of technology.
When you look at mobility, you're looking at security around it, and you also are looking at how quickly they can be given to an end user. It's about how quickly can the end user use it, right? Look at the cloud-based solutions that the mobility technologies are coming out with, and with security wrapped around. When they come out, they're coming with all packed in. So it becomes so much more less of a headache for a customer to start, venturing into specific domains, start looking at every single bit before they get the whole mobility solution together to give it to their users. Now it is much easier because the mobility technology providers itself, the whole solution providers itself, when you look at the end user solutions, those technology providers are wrapping around security. They're wrapping around the cloud ability to throw out the solution to the end users, which becomes the centerpiece for an organization, especially considering the situation now, to move faster.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. We've always had mobility from a technology standpoint, but we never really paid too much attention to it. I think it just became a part of life, and we just kind of rolled with times, right?
Right. I think what lacked was really appreciating what we already had and we're using. We didn't do that so often earlier, but now we kind of appreciate it. Earlier, the users who used to complain about the mobility technologies that we used to give them, today appreciate it.
So I think everybody knows I work for VMware, right? And I just want to, the big event that happened last week, I hope you have attended. Obviously, there's VMworld that happened virtually this year. So, right. As always with VMworld, there is a lot of interesting stuff that comes out of it, and a lot of thought process. There is a lot of next-gen stuff. I just want to get your viewpoint. Is there anything that kind of caught your attention that you thought like, wow, this is interesting, just want to get your thoughts on that.
Oh, I'm more than happy. I've always been a huge fan of what technology VMware brings out. Okay. Just to put it out on record, I am not promoting VMware in any way. Just to mention that explicitly. But I'm always amazed with the kind of trends that VMware brings out as technology space. the fun part is how about they realizing that they should not be competing in certain spaces, rather working together with a lot of these providers, which actually was the game changer when we looked at it. Look at all the public cloud providers that today VMware partners with. You're actually telling the customers you have the freedom of choice. You can choose anything, and we still run on any one of those. And you have the ability to move us from your on-prem into the clouds and still work seamlessly with it. Look at the developmental products, the products that are released for development efforts. Let that be Tanzu, let that be now. Those things, if you look at that space, it's VMware. What VMware is telling is you don't have to necessarily get locked down by VMware as a vendor for your technology adoption. You have the flexibility to choose whatever you want, but we do play a role in some form of factor with any technology that you choose to play with. And that is amazing, right? Because during my days in VMware, I remember how VMware and Oracle were not that great partners to work with, right? But today, there is nothing like that. I mean, if you look at it, great partnerships out there. Yeah, I mean, the things that I have seen is with VCF and VMC and stuff. I've seen a great advancement in giving the customer the comfort of choosing what they want to do, and still being there as a technology partner to help them achieve in their own areas of interest, supporting them with any vendor they choose, any technology space they choose to work with, right? And that is the amazing bit. And obviously, here comes the part that I kind of think VMware could work a little more on, right? All these solutions that you release out is for the mature markets, heavily mature markets. That really doesn't shine here. For which I think that's where VMware should start looking at how do we get these so-called immature markets, or someone who is not ready, a market which is not ready to adopt the latest stuff and move ahead in technology. How do we get them to change that mindset and adopt it?
I tend to agree with you on that. The challenge here is also in general our markets. I always talk about this. In the US, what's large enterprise to us is mega enterprises in the region, and what's small, it's probably mid-sized to sometimes can be considered large in some sense in ASEAN and whatnot. So I think it's a different quantum of stuff, and we are also generally, hate to say it, we are a couple of years behind generally from adoption and whatnot. But I do see that changing a little bit. Because as things become a little bit more mainstream, a little bit more consumable, I think that's slowly changing, slowly but surely.
Surely,
But I
yes.
like your point, the first part where you talk about multi-vendor and whatnot. I am with the perception of this, right? VMware has always been known as the Switzerland of platforms, so to speak, in the data center, right? And I'm sure during your time and not too distant ago, we acquired OVH. No, rather we sold the cloud
OVH,
piece of the
yes,
business to OVH, right?
Right.
I think we made a very, very cognizant choice there because,
Correct.
everybody's talking about hybrid cloud, blah, 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 blah. Great, right? But nobody wants to be tied to a single cloud. I mean, we're all talking multi-clouds these days, right?
Right.
And in some form or shape, we have now, like it or not, kind of became the Switzerland of the clouds as well, in some sense, right? So in some sense, Mr. Customer, if you don't want to run on AWS, great, right? Go run on Azure, run on Google, whatever it may be, right? You take your pick, right? It's
Right.
cool with us. And
Right.
likewise, in the data center, you can run on the HPs of the world, the IBMs, the Lenovo's, whatever you might choose to. So I think in the end, I kind of like your point on choices. I think customers these days are very savvy anyway. So, I mean, short of that, is there any like one particular or two particular technologies or announcements during VMworld that you're particularly excited over, like intrigue or something along those lines?
You're kind of telling me to choose amongst the plethora of Hollywood stars, choose one who is your
Yeah. I
favorite,
mean,
right?
because I'll be the first to admit, right? When I was building, how VMworld you can build your schedules and whatnot, right?
Right, right.
So I was like clicking trigger happy. I want to be in this session. I want to be in this session. And then after a while, it's like, oh my god, it's like there's so many sessions. I could not potentially finish everything, right?
I think the bigger space that I was really interested about what VMware was doing is about how to bring, I don't not lose track of what they do in the infrastructure, the data center space, but trying to be more app centric.
Mm-hmm.
Everything around the app centric world that was announced was something that gave me it was like, it's the right way forward, because gone are the days when you look at data center as a data center anymore. Nobody cares, to be honest. It's there. It is there to be seen. It's there to be built. But everyone is app centric now, and it's nice to see how the focus has been towards cloud native solutions, and the focus has been towards more the application development world and how to make it in the real sense a serverless computing world. It's kind of a right way of looking at it.
I like how you kind of mentioned that. So, there is two schools of thoughts here, right? There are some people that kind of have this thoughts process where when you talk about app development, the VMware is not always the first name that comes to mind.
Right.
Do you think that's true, or is that perception changing, or what's your thoughts on that front specifically?
I don't know why people had that impression that VMware is completely only a data center platform, or just looking at trying to make data center a better place. Because when I was working for VMware, we still were looking at what the application was. We always did when I was in VMware too. So it's just a perception, to be honest. I know when you say app development or application, VMware is not the first name that comes to your mind. But I think that's what's changing when you look at the Pivotals, the Tanzus. You're changing that perception already. And there was a time when I used to speak to certain application developers who used to never acknowledge the word called VMware. They was like, oh, okay, I know it's got something to do with servers. Yeah, great. But today they do realize and they do relate to it because they have started seeing, what VMware does in that space. And surprisingly, I've got some of my development teams who come and say, we should actually start looking at Pivotal. Since we are a huge VMware customer, why not we start trying to see how we can bring the application development base into the infrastructure area?
I mean, sometimes, we see it from a very biased view, so it's nice to kind of get two ways.
Yes.
And so I also want to kind of, get your maybe prediction or viewpoint on this, right? What do you think would be the split in years to come, right? I mean, let's put a timeline to this, like 3 years, 5 years, right? Do you see, the containers taking over the world, or do you see maybe a 70-30 split between VMs and containers? What do you think?
In my opinion, what would happen is whatever is new kind of development out there will all move towards container world. And that is the right thing to do. Because you cannot change what is already there. Now, when you look at huge financial organizations, make no mistake about it, these applications that have been serving the financial organizations have been there for decades. And you don't expect anybody to change that. But if they're bringing in something new, they would find a way to bring it in the right way. And that's where I think containers would play a huge role. And that's exactly where it should be. And just not about financial sector. If you look at any industry for that matter, they will look at an application which is container-based development mode, right? And for me, I think what should be the bigger focus is how to get internal skill set, internal people who do the development work to focus more of their energy towards building container world. Now, what I see in the next 2-3 years is there's going to be a good, healthy 40% moving towards the container methodologies, right? But the remaining 60% is not because they don't want to move. It's just because it is better off to be that way. You cannot move everything into the container world. I mean, make no mistake. Even though it's spoken so highly about, you can't move just everything immediately into that space. There's still a lot more work needs to be done around that area. There's, as a customer, when you start deploying, implementing it, you will start realizing how your base foundation is not ready for that. There's a lot of change that you need to do from your base infrastructure point of view.
So there is also a connotation with open source, right?
Yes.
It's community driven. We all know, right? Like how Linux was, Red Hat was, etc., etc. There is also a thought process that we are all giving a lot into the community, but at some point somebody's gonna monetize this stuff. So do you
Yes.
subscribe to the fact that if, let's say, none of the vendors can monetize this, it's going to be a failed project? Do you think that's going to be the case?
You need to have a tight structure around it so that it can be effectively used somewhere, right? For some odd reason, the world looks at it as monetizing is the way to structure it. Yeah, because everyone needs their bread and butter and roof. I get it. But the ultimate way is if and I might be dreaming big here. Let's say from a tech community standpoint, if someone can start a community company which is going to structure the whole thing and say, we're going to bring this together and we're going to have open source community-based solutions being driven out to usage in a more structured way, which doesn't happen so often. If you look at it, it doesn't happen, but it's a dream. Not really to monetize it. I would still refrain from monetizing those stuff because those are there to use and it's there to experiment. It's there to make it better. It's there to change it to someone's needs and benefits, but need to put a structure around it so that it can sustain. The thing is, the community moves so fast, changes are so fast. By the time you adopt one thing, it has changed 10 times different. So it's about putting a structure and
Anyway, hey, you know what? It's been a pleasure talking to you, man. Sometimes
fun, man.
it's nice to get somebody on the same wavelength, bounce some ideas, thoughts, trends and whatnot. So before we end the segment, I just want to do a quick rapid fire thing. So I'm going to give you 2 items and then you just kind of call out the first thing that comes to mind. Just a
Sure,
couple of ones. So it's as
Perfect.
simple as something like if coffee or tea, you just kind of say coffee or tea, right?
Okay.
So, okay, let's go, man. Leader or manager?
Leader.
Established vendor or startup?
Startup.
Work from home or office?
Anywhere. Work from home.
Good one, man. It's very politically correct. I like how you took that one. VM or containers?
Containers.
All right. And the last one, SAN or HCI, man?
HCI.
Thank you so much for having you coming on board to the show today. I hope to speak to you again soon, man.
Sure,
I
man.
really enjoyed my
Sure.
time today.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thanks.
And
Thank you so much. Thanks a
I
lot
wish
for
you
getting
every
me here.
success with that whole VMUG thing, and I am very vested in VMUG, to be really honest. I try to drive a lot in Singapore. We owns a VMUG initiative for us at VMware. I know Sean does it in KL.
Yes, it is tough, and hopefully this year, going forward, we'll try and make some changes to it and try and see how we can make it really effective. I've got to blame myself also for it, for not giving enough time to it. But yeah, we'll try and do.
Yeah, we all have a day job, we try our very best, but yeah.
Yes.
So thanks a lot. I'll see you
again, man.
again.
Thanks
Right,
again.
thanks, man.
Cheers, man. Thanks.